Hi, my name is Arturo Mancheno, and I'm going to share some of my philosophy with you as to the nature of the universe and our relation to it. So, at a very early age, I had a lot of questions of the universe, and I couldn't shake it. One of the biggest questions I had was, why are we here? What am I supposed to do? What is this about? And I could never shake that question, and then eventually I ended up studying a bit about the body, a little bit of physics, a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of a lot of different ologies. And so eventually, because I could not shake this question as to why we were here, and it was a really profound sort of question. It's something I couldn't shake. And over time, I essentially decided that, I really wanted to know. And so I basically have always questioned like the limits that we have, and I wanted to emulate the greatest minds ever, like Tesla, Aristotle, the greatest philosophers, let's say Buddha, Jesus Christ. I knew that these people weren't just smart, they were connected to the universe. And fortunately, eventually, I would come across the right information, the right science, I guess, the cutting edge sciences. And in a sense, I knew, looking back, that I was divine this information. There was no way it was just chance that I got a hold of all of this information. I was able to do things that were not normal. Now, this is where we get into sort of metaphysics. I try to explain things as linearly as I can through neurology, through physics. So it's not just sort of out there woo-woo. It's got some very hard, interesting information. So let me get into some of my philosophy. So, I would have conversations with the universe, and answers would come to me. For example, I asked the universe when I wanted to connect. Like I said, I knew these great minds before me weren't just smart; they were connected to something where the universe revealed itself to them. So when I decided to go on this journey and see, if I could connect in a certain way, I had questions. So the first, and I didn't want to start with, like all the knowledge I had acquired, because I knew that knowledge, every decade or so there's basically a new understanding as to the nature of the universe. And so something that you think is completely true now could be improved. And, as we learn about, what the universe is, the nature of the universe, we have a greater understanding. So I didn't want to start with all the information that I had acquired. I thought, start with an empty cup and just see where it goes. And so I found myself questioning the universe. The first question I had after I emptied my cup of knowledge was, well, let's start with fundamentals, the super fundamentals. What am I asked. And the answer came to me that basically your body is an energy instrument that you were given to perceive different energy forms around you. For example, your eyes pick up light waves, different frequencies, different colors. Your ears pick up sound waves, also frequencies, which are basically molecules vibrating, traveling the air until it hits your eardrum, and then you decipher it. There's smell and taste, which are chemical, and all of these senses are converted into electricity through your nerves. And obviously that information goes to your brain. There's so many other senses. We know now there's more than the 5 that I'm not sure if it was Aristotle came up with. Who knows? We'll have to look into that. But so there's more than the five senses. There's, now we know, interoception, which essentially allows you to gauge your blood pressure. There's sort of magnetoreception, where some people have a better understanding of their location, geography-wise. They don't get lost as easily. There's also mechanoreception, which I argue is the greatest sense that you could work with out of all your senses to amp up the information that you get from the universe. All of the, your eyes, the sound, taste, feeling, so on and so forth, your position, time, space, which is partly mechanoreception, proprioception. So all of these senses, you can, like, let's say, try to focus and want to see something a little bit better, clear. Your mind focuses on sight. You want to hear something a little bit better, you try to listen. You're able to discern a little bit more the sound because your mind is focusing on it. And focus, well, I'm mentioning focus, is one of the greatest things that you could work on in order to make the universe more malleable. Now, I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself. I should have just stuck with the body as an energy instrument that you use to perceive different energy forms, but I do this. Essentially, focus, according to the CIA, is one of the greatest, I guess, things you could work on, places you could put yourself to become real focused in order to make the universe more malleable. Now, since I've studied a bunch of different things, and I'm sort of a study-holic, I like to learn about everything. I'm just sort of like this endless sponge when I try to take in as much information. And the information does come to me. It's amazing because I earnestly and dutifully want to know, as much as I can. So, and that's how the CIA information, there's a paper I could share. I'll put it in the link below in this video. So I know, having studied, there's a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? There's a cartoon, which I thought it was funny. I'm like, are they talking down to us? Or, why would they explain quantum physics through cartoons unless they thought they were real dumb? But the cartoon is excellent. It explains this concept called, it's an experiment, the double slit experiment. It's amazing. It's like, I think it's one of the most amazing things that they've understood through physics, quantum physics. And essentially what it is they were able to fire off an electron from a machine, and that alone impressed me. I'm like, damn, we're getting quantum, and the fact that we could create a machine that shoots off one electron at a time, that alone just made my mind go, wow, that's pretty freaking awesome. So, but what was interesting about it is that, and I'll share the link below to that video too, and I suggest you actually watch that and then come back to this video, so that you can understand, what I'm essentially talking about. But essentially it's an experiment where they shoot an electron through a lead plate with two slits, and since they're shooting one at a time, there's a duality as to the nature of the electron. So essentially it's wave and particle. And when they observe, they have another machine that basically looks to see what slit the electron decides to travel through as they're shooting it out. And what they found was this, that the electron acts like a wave when not observed by the machine that's looking to see which slit the electron goes through. So in other words, they shoot these electrons, over time, and they have photographic paper on the other side of the double slit. So when not observed to see which hole or slit the electron goes through, it acts like a wave. And so it shows a diffracted pattern on the other side, sort of like fuzzy waves. And so that shows that it's a wave nature. But when they turn on the machine that looks to see where the electron goes, what's happening is it's collapsing the wave function and drawing it more into the material world, and making it act like a particle. So when observed, instead of the wave pattern on the photographic paper, you start to see two slits delineated. So it's just lines. It's acting as a particle, as if you were to shoot a projectile through the lead. It's going to make only a line on the other side on the photographic paper. And like I said, when not observed, it acts more like a wave. Now, what's interesting is that, I've come up with my own understanding of the universe, and it is very powerful. Very, very, very... the understanding that it's all energy and electromagnetic, and your body, is an instrument that you are given to perceive different energy forms around you, and you want to try to understand the information that you're getting as clearly as possible. So the point of the double slit experiment is your thoughts, when observed, can collapse potential from wave frequencies into realities. And so that's how everything really works. It's like, first you think about it, you see it in your mind, and then you draw it more into reality. That's how architecture works. So they have a vision, they map it down, draw it down, and then they build it. Or, you have a goal or an idea. Whatever it is, it starts in the mind first and goes from there. And then what's happening is you're sending out frequencies. Thoughts emit frequencies. So, and everything has a frequency. If you want to attract something, you have to have the ability to envision it, feel it. Now, I'll explain some information as to manifestation. So, like I said, there's a CIA paper that says basically, in order to create something, the greatest trait or state of mind you can have is being focused. And like I said, information comes to me, and I met all the right people. I was divine this information, because it's impossible that I got all this information when I was seeking it. And I'm so thankful for it. But so the first question was, energy, instrument, so on and so forth. And, I realized also while I was having this conversation with the universe that I had already known and come across some information in neurology. I had a friend who's doing this program in neurology, and when I heard the students that were taking that program, it just fascinated me. So I pulled one of my friends aside who's doing the program, and I asked him, "What's the coolest thing that you have learned while taking this program?" And he mentions this part of the brain. This is so many years ago, and only recently have motivational speakers started talking about this. Anyone from Anthony Robbins to, all of them. They all start parroting each other, and it's the reticular activating system. It's part of the mind. It's responsible for focus, awareness, consciousness, arousal, all things that are very important for your mind to be interested. And if you're not interested in something and your mind is just like half-ass about it, it's not going to get done as well as it can be. So now the information that this guy had told me was, okay, reticular activating system responsible for, all these sort of mind things, consciousness, arousal, awareness, peaking the mind, essentially, focus. And also it acts like a filter of information. So it's in the brainstem. It's one of the first parts of the brain we developed. So it's super important. Since it was one of the first parts of the brain we developed, there's a midbrain, this is a part of the reticular activating system. Midbrain, cortex, neocortex. And the more layers, so we have 7 layers of neocortex. I have an infinite amount of neocortex. But anyway, so essentially, the more layers of brain that we've developed, the higher consciousness we have. Like neocortex allows us to do higher process thinking, future planning, arithmetic, this kind of thing. So higher process thinking is involved in neocortex. But going back to the reticular activating system, it's one of the first parts of the brain developed, so it's really, really, really important. Now, what he told me that was advanced and is still cutting edge, and you had never heard about this, and that is this, that the reticular activating system is also responsible for not only those mind things that I mentioned, again, focus, awareness, arousal, consciousness, and the filtering of information. Let's go back to that. Essentially, how it works is, if you're looking for your keys, your mind starts to look for the pattern of keys. So the shape of keys, so you find it. It's like you're focusing on keys, and that's what happens. Your mind focuses on that. Now, it's also there's a hierarchy as to the information that's coming in. It judges the importance of what's going on around. So if you all of a sudden are in danger, like a tiger appears or an earthquake happens or whatever, essentially, instead of whatever you were doing at the time, you abruptly realize that you need to focus on, survival. And so it's super important that, you know what's important to focus on at the time. The reticular activating system will essentially, if you were writing something down, it realizes, stop that. Let's get into a safe location or whatever's needed. So there's all of that, and even, there's more. So, but those are all mind things. What he told me, which is still cutting edge today, and like I said, you've never heard about this unless you heard it from me already, and that is that, here, let me drink a little coffee. So, it's also responsible for, reticular activating system is also responsible for, you're firing off your extensor muscles, so anti-gravity muscles. And I thought, wow, that's a trip. That's a motor component, muscle component. And, I realized, all these things are mind, and then all of a sudden you get the anti-gravity muscles. And so I had known all this when I was talking universe, energy, instrument, so on and so forth. And the way he explained how the mind and the extensor muscles worked is, when you're a baby or a fetus, you're hunched over. And as you grow up, you fire off your extensors, your posture is more erect, and you stand, straight up. And as you age and your mind declines, you start to hunch over again. So immediately, I was like, I reverse engineered in my mind. I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm wondering if you fire off your extensor muscles doing exercises, which, like I said, I was divining this information, so I incorporated these exercises into when I was trying to connect with Source. When I was trying to get information from the universe, I was looking to connect with Source itself. And so, going back to the conversation in the universe, First question, what am I? Energy instrument, pick up different energy forms around you. And I realized the more accurate your information is intake, the more accurate your reaction to reality will be. And you want to be symbiotic, congruent, in tune with the universe. It's all frequency. When I say in tune, it's a frequency that you want to acquire, or a state of being, a vibration that you want to express. And so, even though the answer of I'm an energy instrument came to me, I thought I want it to be even more basic and deeper. Yeah, that was a simple answer that I got from the universe, but I wanted it to be even simpler. There's a quote, I don't know who it is that said it, but essentially, I think it was Einstein that said that the simpler you can explain something, the closer you are to truth. And so I asked again, what am I? And the answer this time came to me, and it was through physics that, I understood this, studying physics. And that was, well, all we are is mass. And there's an integral property to mass, possibly for all time-space, as far as we know, and that is that mass has a property called gravity. So a little speck of sand has, as small as it is, it has a gravitational pull. And I had a teacher that explained this concept quite interestingly, and that was, if there was like an edge to the universe and you could put one grain of sand on that edge of the universe and go the furthest away you could on the other side and put another grain of sand on that, opposite end of the universe, if that were possible, there would still be a gravitational pull effect on each other. And, I thought, well, that's kind of mind-blowing. And so, like I said, the right information came to me. And so, the Earth, for example, the more mass you have, the greater the gravitational pull. There's the sun that has a pull on the solar system, all the planets. There's the moon, which the Earth can hold. And Earth is basically, obviously bigger than the moon because the moon rotates around the Earth. And so, and let me differentiate between gravity and weight. Or mass and weight. So if you go to the moon, you're going to weigh less because there's less of a gravitational pull on your body towards the surface of the planet. And let's say if you weigh, 185 here on Earth, you go to the moon, because there's a less of a gravitational pull, you're going to weigh less over there, but you're made up of the same amount of stuff, whether you're on Earth, mass, that's stuff, or the moon. So anyways, when it came to me that, gravity, mass, and this is when I say it's an integral part of us, I mean, on a super fundamental level, we have had a relationship to gravity for all of time space. So everything that this energy instrument has processed information while experiencing gravity. Now, gravity is such a fundamental force that you don't normally think about it. For example, when you're sitting, and just doing your thing, you don't think about your position of your arms or legs, whatever. You normally just put yourself in the most comfortable position automatically. It's an automatic response. So that's how fundamental it is. Now, I'm going to give you some information ahead of time, and I'll explain it linearly later. But the more you play with gravity through movement, it's a relationship with the universe Well, what it does, the more you move, essentially, is you're sending extra information through your reticular activating system, which filters the data. But what you're doing is, you're through movement, you are and playing with gravity. It's what I call movement. Okay, you have to have fun with this. It's an interesting relationship that you create with the universe, and so. So basically, when you're moving, what you're doing is you're making your body into a generator. Now, how a generator works is usually there's a coil and a magnet, and the magnet spins, and it creates an electron flow through the coil, or usually sometimes it's copper. And what happens is the movement of magnetism, essentially, and it moves this way. So this is just something I remember learning. If it's going this way and the coil is, going this way, when the magnet's moving in a circle, what it does is it generates electron movement in this direction, or this direction if it's spinning this way, or that direction if it's spinning this way. But the point is, movement's involved. It creates electric current. Me being the ever questioner, and I think really I was rewarded all of this information because I really had a passionate desire that was earnest. There's no substitution for really wanting something. When it comes to manifesting or receiving information, etc., etc. So that's important to know. It's in order to really manifest what you want, you have to, number one, become focused and movement. What ends up happening is you're generating all of this extra information in your body, which is electricity. It goes through your reticular activating system, and essentially it's like a dimmer switch. So if you turn up the dimmer switch, the light gets brighter. And essentially, when you're sending more information from your position in time-space through movement, your relationship with gravity, what you're doing is you're amping up your brain. You're generating more power. It's actual power. If you study physics, you're going to understand how, electricity, power works. And so you're essentially supersaturating your brain with all this information. Actual power. So what's happening is your brain works like a radio station antenna. What's important for a radio station antenna? Frequency that it broadcasts, and that is everything has a frequency. I mean, everything has a frequency. Beauty has a frequency. Information has a frequency. Love has a frequency. And so knowing how to tune your brain to frequencies that's one thing. You have to be able to envision, but also you need power. In other words, there's certain radio stations that broadcast on more power, and what that does is you're able to pick up that radio station at a further distance. So the more power you generate for your brain, the more malleable the universe becomes. So not only do you need the right frequency, which is the thought, you need to also generate power, literal, for your brain. And focus is the most important aspect to that. That allows you to tap into higher power, the right frequency, and to stay tuned. All of those are important. So I think that's enough information for now. I have so much more information, but that's just my philosophy. It works. I came up with a 3-hour workout, and that's intense. And let me tell you a little bit of my history as far as physical. I started working out at a very young age, around 13. We'd wake up, I think it was 6 in the morning, drink some coffee, and work out for a couple hours before you go to school. And my motivation was we hung out with some kind of tough kids, just neighborhood kids that we would walk to school with. So it's like you had to know each other. And so I had 2 younger brothers, and I had to make sure that we were all pretty much safe and cool. So working out was a great way of you get stronger, and so you can physically defend yourself if you needed to, which we didn't have to, really. But there were other benefits. Obviously, you feel better, and that's when I discovered how powerful working out movement was for focusing. I had a lot of testosterone running through my body. Like, I had to work out just to keep my mind on straight. Like, I was a powerhouse as far as that was concerned. And so I learned through working out, you feel better, but I would work out up to 3 hours, maniac, machine, at a very young age. And I learned that I would become super focused. Like, I'd look in the mirror and I was like, I was on fire. Like, I'd push myself really hard. And so, because I had also a lot of angst in my life, in that young age, and, it's like you feel powerless. And as a man, at least, myself, my nature, you wanted to feel like you could contribute, have a little more power. Life just seems so out of control. And I found refuge in working out. So I ended up becoming, in my high school, the strongest guy. Won the heavyweight division championship. Now, I wasn't the strongest guy, but I won the heavyweight division championship because I was actually a good guy. That's another story, though. I tried to help someone else that was stronger, and they didn't listen, and they ended up scratching out of the event because they couldn't lift what they were trying to lift. And so I ended up being... Anyways, that was just a beautiful story. That's the same year that the football team won all of Northern California Division Championship. So there were some other strong guys there. So, not to say that I wasn't strong and or I shouldn't have won. But, so anyways... and also, I taught myself martial arts. So, and that was around that age, 13 as well. I would push myself, stretch, see how high I could do a scissor kick. Just fly. I wanted to fly and reach super high, and I could. As far as I could reach. Like stretching too. Anyways, and I ended up being able to beat every single black belt I ever came across in various styles. Now, it's not to say that I didn't lose. I got my butt kicked once by this guy who practiced. That's the most important thing for martial arts, is you got to practice it. But he was also just as quick, just as agile as I was, but he had more reach. So he kicked my butt the first time I sparred with him, but I watched him, and and everyone, you'll learn if you have studied martial arts, that people get into rote movements. In other words, everyone trains differently, and everyone has a sort of a if you're real good, you have premeditated moves where you put someone in a certain position, and then you take advantage of the fact that you got them in that position because you already know what the next move is. So I watch him, and I saw that what this guy would do is when you throw a kick at him, he was quick enough, and it's through practice and premeditated movements, he would move back, and since he was fast enough that he would attack you then once you committed to your kick. So we're talking split second, next level movements. And so it's sort of like chess. I see it more like dancing because I love, martial arts. I see it as a dance versus, like fighting or whatever. I mean, that's just so mundane if you're just like, trying to overpower him. I was strong, and I decided I wouldn't want to beat people using my strength, wrestle or whatever, just physically dominate them. I was like, I like finesse, agility, quickness. Like I came up with this one exercise with the mirror. Now, and in the future I'll explain to you mirror work is very important in order to manifest or create. Looking into your own eyes, you can't lie to yourself. So if you're in the right state of mind to focus, and you tell yourself, I want to do this, I want to do that. Combining exercise with goals, with manifesting, is one of the greatest alchemies, one of the greatest combinations of things to do in order to manifest more. Now, exercise through movement, as I explained, reticular activating system, causes your mind to focus. So, I would incorporate these exercises. Now, so there's the physical aspect, 3 hours of working out. The first 2 hours are sort of more primal, and I said I was going to finish, but I'm not finished. I'm going to just keep talking. I explain as much information as I can. So essentially there are 3 doors that I call them doors to access source itself. And like I said, I see everything as energy. What is source? Well, I couldn't find a good enough definition out there, so I created my own definition of what source is. And to me, I from a young age, I imagined God to be pure. Okay, that was my first understanding. And I went back to that, and I was like, well, what would be the greatest power in the universe? And I thought, well, something that is the purest, because that has to be super powerful to be pure in this universe, and it exists. So I thought, okay, so to me, source is pure, good, great, powerful energy. I associate the greatest frequencies, and purity is a frequency too. So once I started taking this path, it was at the young age of 22, 23 or something, and I started to want to connect to higher information. I wanted the universe to divine or reveal itself to me. And so, understanding that everything is a frequency, I started having visions for the first time. It wasn't daydream. I would find myself in these places where my mind would literally just telescope into another reality, sort of. It's like I was really there while awake. And in one of these visions, I found myself, I had seen all of reality in the form of a circle. So all the frequencies that exist in a circle. I thought, so I thought, okay, everything is frequency, and within this circle is all of the frequencies in the universe, the good, the bad, everything, and that included source itself. So I found myself in this vision in the middle of the circle, and I realized immediately, your mind gets to choose. You get to choose, and this is one of the greatest things about the universe, is you get to choose what to align your mind with and what you want to create. And that is beautiful. And you can change it at any time. Now is always the most powerful time in your life. You have more power right now, this instant, than you have any other time in your life, and it's always that way. So there are some very interesting aspects to this universe where you could change just like that if you really want to. You always have the ability, always now. So anyways, back to the vision. I was in the middle of the circle, and I realized I get to choose what frequency I align to, and I realized immediately from the center where I was to the very, very top. And as I would think about and philosophize, and connect to source, I realize it's always infinite. So it's a direct current. If there's a direct current in the universe, it's from the center to the very top, and obviously polar opposite. So you don't want to work with the polar opposite energy, though, trust me. The reason why is because what you're doing essentially as a radio station, not only just your mind but your body, you channel energy. And you don't, there's certain properties that come with the good: love, light, warmth, beauty, gracefulness, powerful. Those are all good things, you know. You could do grace. You could channel all of these different traits. You can become more stoic, more moral. All of these things because you're focused through 2 hours of exercise just to get the mind ready. The physical, you have to take, each one of these doors you have to unlock in order. And the first one is you have to pay attention to your physical form. So that's what all the working out is about, playing with gravity, super focusing the mind is what's happening as you're firing extensor muscles. I have a lot of exercises, so much information. I could just talk for hours and hours and hours as to, what exercises to do that make your mind more focused. Like going back to the double slit experiment. Before I learned of the double slit experiment, I had come up with exercises that, that basically were, for example, one of them was, as I was preparing myself, I would do these, you can call them rituals or essentially practices, more so. I'd say practices, where I would just start looking around the room, pay attention, like, okay, there's a telephone case, there's a fan, there's some DVDs for my burner, glasses, Xbox, crystal, lights, camera, etc., etc. I would just walk around the room and pay attention and nod that you are here, pen, remote, battery. And I'd walk in a circle and look and pay attention to all of these physical things. Later, I realized what I was doing was like I said, information came to me. So later I realized, oh shit, the double slit experiment is what I was doing in my room without knowing what I was doing. So I was divining the information, I was doing these practices, and then years later, even now, I get information, through science, through experiences that, it's like that is what was happening. And so the knowledge that I had intuitively, that I was divined, I would get linear information as to how it works. And so essentially what I was doing was I was drawing the items around me more into the material plane. So I was really dealing with the material plane. And the best way to do that is essentially, so let's say stress. Everyone has some kind of stress of some sort in their life, no matter how well they live it. And exercise, a lot of it ends up, so high amounts of cortisol causes stress. It can lower your immune system. It causes your mind not to focus as much. And if you exercise long enough, so stress isn't bad though. That's good. It gets you to do things too. But in high amounts, it's not good. So the exercise, it does an infinite cascading amount of things biochemically to your body. The same with your mind. Generates a lot of focus. And so what you're doing is, through exercises, you're setting up the correct biochemistry in order to feel better. And one of those ways is it actually breaks down the molecule of cortisol, so you don't feel as stressed. Also, there's, and like I said, I have so much information, so I'm just gonna, I'm sharing sort of sporadically everywhere. things as I'm thinking about them right now. So you're also, triggering endorphins. What you do is you're causing pain in your body through working out. And, if you're really sadistic, like I used to be when I was 13, generate a lot of pain and roar. And what's great is you have to envision, like, let's say if you're bodybuilding or sculpturing yourself, what you want to create. So let's say if you want to create a bicep, and and I haven't worked out in ages, but let's say I wanted to create this to be taller and more pointed or defined. First, I envision it. It's not taller, it's not bigger right now, but I envision taking up the space with my muscle in my mind. And then let's say I want to grow it up to here. I envision it's already there. And so it's an energy thing, right? And then my body responds and adapts and creates. Like I said, it starts first in the mind. You have to know how to really push yourself physically. So, in order to connect to source, I can give you the information, but actually doing these practices is not easy, dude. But because I was so focused, and I used to be a machine. That was a long time ago. I wish I had the discipline that I used to have. Now I just, for the longest time, ever since I had connected to this, and I learned how to do some amazing, impossible things that are not believable. Had I not had witnesses and people actually speak out what I was doing, which they had no idea, what I was working on when I was trying to connect to source itself, I'd focus on manifesting things that were not believable. But yet they happened, and one of the gifts that I would get from the universe is people would tell me what I was doing. As abstract and impossible as the manifestations that I wanted to create were, they would tell me. It's like one of the things I want to do, and I was just 22, 23. So essentially, I go on this journey. I remember everything, so I could tell you thought by thought when I first started this journey how I got to where I got, my understanding of the universe and our relationship to it. I think I have the greatest model. As someone once told me, it was at Burning Man, I was looking at some art, and I had said something. It was at Center Camp, and they have different art things displayed, and I had said something, and he gave me his own opinion of it, and I realized, oh, this guy is actually perceptive, and not just like a drone or whatever. And I told him, so it was something where he just didn't accept what I said, and it was also I thought I was insightful, obviously, with what I said, and he was also insightful. So I go, I rarely have the opportunity to ask somebody who's insightful, it seems anyways, a question that I have. And I said, look, I have this understanding of the universe. And he goes, you think you have a better model of the universe? And I'm like, that's right. And so I'm sharing with you this now because the world has changed, and I'm not sure what direction it's going. And so I need to make sure that we start to actually access higher consciousness collectively. And I learned how to do so powerfully that I was able to make the universe very malleable, even things that should be impossible. And so essentially I learned, I think I have the greatest knowledge as to how to interact with the universe, how to maximize your body, to focus the mind, to know what energy to take in, channel, and then create. So I'm talking next level information. And, I always wondered, it's like, okay, you see all these great leaps and bounds and advances in different sciences, whether it's technology or engineering, or, we have greater and greater capabilities as to how we relate with the universe. And, whether it's biochemistry or, more understandings of ourselves, our environment, etc. But I always thought, where's the leaps and bounds in understanding of consciousness? And so, what I tapped into was so powerful, actually, that I accidentally ended up hurting myself. And so I have insights as to how to tap into the greatness and then what not to do. So I put away my practice after 7 months. When I first tapped into it, I did 7 months almost every day almost, of working out 3 hours a day. And I was just tapping into this knowledge that was just so next level. But then I became fearful of it. And also, I was like, is this something I want to share with the world? These insights? Because I wasn't too confident in the direction that the world was going. So I was like, do I want super people out there manifesting on even greater levels and maybe mess things up quicker? I mean, I was a little pessimistic, and that's because during this time reflecting, it's like I put this exercise away for a long time. And, during that time I started studying politics and economics. And I can tell you, I am so glad I tapped into higher source information of a divine nature before studying politics and economics. Because, until now, and I don't want to study politics and economics. It's the most horrible, stuff to learn, and it's because politics is essentially bullshit. It's all power structures that are of such a mundane, primal nature that it is sad. It's like when some people refer to the people that are directing the direction of economies and countries, and as being those people as being reptilian. And my insight is this is when I hear that, I go, well, that's interesting, because reptiles only have a brainstem and a very simple brain that's responsible for primal things. So at the most basic level, the brainstem operates for survival, which is kill it to eat it, or fuck it to reproduce. That supposedly that simple. I think even lizards or whatever have more consciousness than that, but that is essentially what the purpose of the brainstem is, supposedly. Just that. I always think there's more. We have to realize that animals are more conscious than we give them credit for. Dolphins in particular. For example, dolphins have 7 layers of neocortex like we do, and their brains are bigger. So what happens is there's folds in the neocortex, and the folds allows you to create more surface area for neocortex, or allows you to do more higher process thinking. And now dolphins' brains are bigger. They have more neocortex, and we just have right-left brain. And dolphins have 4 lobes, so they're more specialized, I argue. That means that they have more ways to, I believe, this is just my philosophy, but I end up getting the right information, thank God, thank Source, as I call it, that my understanding of the nature of the universe, that it's all energy, all different frequency, and then learning how to tap into what it is that you want. I'm sharing this information now because I realize it's not mine to just keep. So this is something that the world needs. And, I'm not asking for anything. If I would accept donations, but it would go straight to creating a school where I can, essentially invest in, let's say, a specific property, or, technology, or hire people to help me create animation to explain things a lot easier. But anyways, let's go back to dolphins. They have sonar, they have echolocation, and so much more. And obviously, if you look at sound waves of our voice versus sound waves of the way dolphins communicate, you would find that those sound waves look way more orderly, and they have clicks. They bounce sound off of objects for echolocation. It comes back, and they see pictures, etc., etc. I mean, I could keep going on and on and on. And I argue dolphins are actually smarter, and I'll tell you why. Dolphins are more symbiotic with their environment than man is. Now, when I say man, I don't mean you and me, the normal folk. Although, we could definitely be more symbiotic. I look at corporations that are structured, for power and greed, and it's unfortunately that we have a system that rewards greed and power at any cost. Responding to the stockholders, board of directors, no matter what happens to the environment or whatever, we cut corners, costs, and there's mistakes that are made. So, and I hate to say it, but we definitely need to change the structure of the way we relate with our environment, because we shouldn't be having these large oil spills due to trying to cut corners and spend less and end up destroying vast parts of life on Earth. In an early age, I used to be way more optimistic. Like I said, later I started studying politics and economics, so it's really dragged down my psyche. But I realize I delineate between the people, which I find are more open to being loving and cool and chill. And I'm that way. I get along with I can get along with anybody. Whatever social class they are, whatever, sometimes I do get tripped up on philosophy, where, I think, what's interesting that happens with your mind is, as soon as you have a realization that's deep and profound, that a better understanding, all of a sudden your mind thinks that everyone else should be there. And if they're not, then they're just either dumb or just don't get it, or they're sheep. And at least that's, I find my mind does that. So I have to remind myself every once in a while, that it's a consciousness journey. To me, first and foremost, for me, my mind, who I am, it's a journey of consciousness and elevating consciousness. And, when I was practicing, I hit such high levels of being in a superbly great state, bliss, here on Earth, that, like, I did one exercise one day, and, these are just things that would just come to me, thoughts. And I remember thinking, I was on my way to school. At the time I was going to chiropractic college. That's where I got a lot of great information, met a lot of cool people, very great minds. And, the philosophy that the body had the power to heal, all. If it's, in the right state. So one day I'm going to school and I'm thinking, wow, Art, you're in such a great place right now. And, I realized, I'm like, it wasn't always this way, and it's probably not always going to be this way. And so I was thinking, okay, I realized I hadn't had a negative thought in such a long time that I wondered. I was like, can I even have a negative thought? You see, I do all these mind exercises. and kind of playing with the universe in this way. And I thought, okay, let's try to have negative thought. And what was interesting was, and this is too much information, but I like to give detail. In this exercise, I felt this beam of energy coming from the universe from this direction, and it essentially bounced off my mind where it couldn't even enter my mind. So it was sort of like I was in a place where I was actually protected, energetic-wise, or, I was in such a state of being that my mind was generating certain frequencies, and that didn't allow for that kind of energy to enter. And so it was interesting. The fact that it came from this direction and bounced off or whatever, kind of like a pool. It actually was like a pool shot. It's like you take the cue ball, you use a certain angle. The angle it came was from here. Like I said, it's too much information. It bounced right off. It's like I deflected it. So I think, from that, I realized that you put yourself in such an energetic state that, things change. And it comes down to what you focus on. And like I said, for the longest time, I didn't want to share this information because I thought it was too powerful. And I have to share with you again that it's all frequency. You want to work with the good energy. It should be obvious as to why, but I'll explain. This is so powerful, it actually can be dangerous. And I learned that firsthand, so I think, when I'm telling you this information, I have to share this, because it's not safe. So that's why you need to become focused first, the first 2 hours of exercise, just to become focused, so you make sure that you are directing your mind in the right location, which is essentially this. So that circle of energy, I envisioned white light at the top, black polar opposite, and as you get away from the infinite top, it becomes more shaded gray until you get to the middle, which is gray, and then it gets darker and darker. So you only want to work with the energy from the sides, 90 degrees from you to the top, and preferably closer to the top. Whether it's you want to become more graceful, mindful, good. And what's beautiful is this, that, no matter what you've done in your life, like back then, at the age of 22, 23, I thought, like, let's say being promiscuous was a sin. I grew up Catholic, and then, it's interesting, I went through baptism, communion, confirmation. I remember before I really allowed myself to separate myself from my Catholic upbringing was in church. They always had these crosses up there, and I was just sitting there thinking, and I was looking at Jesus. And, I thought, okay, look, if you did create me, then you created my mind. So please don't take offense if I question, everything in the universe. But it's interesting because I had a conversation and I asked for leniency as to how far I could take my understanding and perception. I didn't want to, break what connection I had and offend. It's kind of funny because these days, people getting offended or whatever, but I really was altruistic, and I asked for permission to seek. So while I had that upbringing, essentially what I find that's interesting is that there are a lot of truths in a lot of religions. So I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, what I do, my mind is very good at assessing patterns. So, and from that I gain knowledge. So what I do is I look at what most people on earth are believing, are connected to, understandings, and then I look for patterns. Like, for example, what are the patterns in religion? And so I just think linearly, and I think, well, prayer is a common thing in many religions. And all prayer is, if you want to break it down, is you invoke emotion, which is important for manifesting, by the way. It's not only being focused, you have to have invested emotion. And I have exercises to not only just the physical, to focus the mind and to create the biochemistry necessary to take yourself to a blissful state, a loving state even. It's like really amazing. You work with breath, and through some of these exercises, not only just the physical rawr, getting that kind of energy out, which is important. You want to get the primal energy out. So, and there's a word called Empyrean, which is the highest reaches of heaven. But there's also another definition which I always had a problem with for a long time, and that was a place of fire or light. And then I realized, so the highest reaches of heaven, it opens up your consciousness in the right direction. Because at least it did mine. I thought, wow, I thought heaven was a hard enough place to get to, a sort of state of mind or state of being, state of consciousness. And I thought, highest reaches, wow, now I've got to try even higher. So that opens up a pathway, a gateway to higher even states of mind, states of being, states of possibility, and it's infinite. As when you learn, energy and what you're sort of wanting to focus on, source itself, purity, pure within the pure. It's like I've honed in the details to become greater and more powerful, like what to focus on exactly. That you tap into this very powerfully. It is so powerful, man. You are left with no doubt because you feel it. And you don't have feelings for no reason. It's like these people that try to, when you're young, you're not as connected to your feelings, so, it becomes overwhelming and overpowering. But as you get older, you should realize, that love is the greatest experience you can have in this form. Don't lie to yourself. It's like that is the most important thing, at least to me it was. It's like, and what's great is you create this relationship essentially with the universe. And so you want to be playful, you want to be interactive. It's like it's important to have goals. Because otherwise, it's like if you're not trying to channel anything, your mind is just flowing through the universe. You're going to get good stuff, maybe bad stuff, who knows? But if your mind is channeling, trying to tap into something, you're telling the universe what you want to create. And that's very important. You have to actually it's good to write down the goals too. There's something about the physical interaction of you writing it down and it manifesting. There's so many things I could share with you. And I am trying to share with you. So okay, I think that's about it for now. There's so much more information to share. But, that's a good start. Now, if you like what you've heard, please take the time to like and subscribe. I'm going to put this video in a couple different locations. Share it if you like it. I'm going to start sharing a lot more information like this. And I hope and dream that we take things to another level, and I know this is the answer to what's going on right now. It's like the universe is essentially telling me, look, it's time you share this information, it's sorely needed, and it's a self-limiting power, which is why I realize this is why I'm sharing it now too. I realize if you work with negative energy, you're going to short circuit yourself. So it's going to turn off. So, and just be careful. You don't, it's like, I know there are people who are not, they're genuinely not good. And I want those people to know it's so much better to be good. It's like the feelings are much better. You really want to tap into goodness. Trust me, it's way more powerful. It's not as easy. It's just like everything else. It's the good stuff takes a lot of work, dedication, but the rewards are so much better. Let me explain the feeling that you get, and now I'll just wrap it up there. So when I first started being divine, these exercises, it took 3 days before, and that's the only time I had to have faith. But I just went through it. I just, I was doing these exercises, and I'll explain, what the first exercise was. Let me write that down for the next video. Like what I did the first days of when I connected. The physical exercises I did, I remember everything, so line by line I'll give you the information and some of the science behind it, and then probably end up talking like this. So first 3 days didn't feel anything. I already knew how to push my body and my mind, and I knew that in order to connect to higher information, I needed to be focused. So that's where I came up with physical exercises to take myself there. And so essentially after the third day, I had already many natural highs. Winning the weightlifting contest, it was such a fucking, excuse my language, rush. I was the last event, everyone knew I was strong already. My name was on the top of the bench press list. They used to have the names on there, and I remember as a junior or even sophomore, I would look up at that list and I'd think, I want to be at the top. I want my name to be at the top, and it was for a long time. I was voted the strongest guy in high school, and I think that might have been before I won the weightlifting contest, heavyweight division. And so it was the last event. Everyone was watching, and it was the most amazing thing. Like, I had worked out for years, hours and hours and hours, and I never saw anyone finish a lift that took that long, and it was military press. I had it up like this for days, and like I said, I'd worked out so much. Anyone I spotted, it was my brothers at a young age, or bigger people in high school, that took that long holding it, the muscle would fatigue. Never saw anyone be able to lift after holding it and not finishing the lift. And there I was, and it was like, it was 5 more pounds than the guy I used to hang out with all the time. And so I had that much time to think about it. I was like, I've never seen someone finish a lift that took this long. And I was like, okay, get one hand up. And that's what I would used to do, is I would always lift the right hand first and then lock it out with the left. But that thing was not moving for days. And then finally, I'm like, okay, suck it up. You got to do it. And then I look up, and this guy who I was trying to beat I had a bench press behind me. He was standing on that bench press and looking down at me, going like this, like he was trying to blow the weight down. And I was like, that was such a mind fuck to look at. It's like that could easily break your concentration and have you just go, ah. But instead, I had already committed, and I had already thought, I have to push this up. I look up, he makes me practically laugh and lose my concentration, but then I had already committed. When I finally locked it out, everyone started screaming. Like, wow, like, wow. That was an amazing high. Being with beautiful women, I was lucky. I used to be really good looking and nice. I was kind of a player, but I honestly had, I loved, the women that I was with. And so I was good looking, I worked out, and I think that had a lot to do with my chemistry, my magnetism. I know it. I know for a fact that, that was a big part of it. It was just exercising, put me in a place that, and being earnestly nice. That doesn't mean that I didn't see a lot of girls, but I was, honest. A lot of them knew I was seeing the other girls because they talked. What was amazing was, I wish it was a business when I was that young, because they would all refer each other. They were good girls, and whatever. So that was a beautiful experience, a very beautiful experience, being able to share these relations with these beautiful, wonderful people. And so other, natural highs. These are all natural highs that I experienced. And the way to describe when you get there physically, and this is the goal, is to make a union between your soul, and I've defined the soul itself, my soul. I don't need somebody to tell me what a soul is. And so I was lucky. I see it as a soul is an instrument that you were given, just as your body's an instrument you're given to perceive different energy forms around you. Your soul is an instrument that you're given. Now you have to foster it. You don't feel it unless you actually work on it. It's like, you don't feel powerful and strong unless you work out and you're powerful and strong. You have to commit energy to it in the right way, and then you really feel it. Then you go, oh, wow. Like, I remember going through these exercises and I was thinking, do I even have a soul? I'm like, I remember I used to have one, and so, yeah, I fostered it again. And it's an instrument, my philosophy, my understanding, and I have powerful relations with the universe when I take the time to connect. So, essentially, I see the soul as an instrument that you're given to connect to Source itself. So, the three doors are physical, to focus the mind to work with the cleanse the spirit. And like I said earlier, no matter what you've done, you can take yourself and become more pure. Align yourself more with this energy. What you do is you draw in the energy through your breath. This is the third hour now. First 2 hours primal, push yourself, get your endorphins kicked in, cortisol lower, amped up power to the brain for focus, creating the radio station that you want to be. Tapping into the right frequency, what you want to broadcast out the universe that you want. The universe is very responsive when you interact, when you participate, when you activate. So, and this is what's interesting about manifestation, is you learn that it's not as linear as you think. Like, for example, when I was younger, I was able to manifest powerfully due to discipline. So in other words, if I wanted to become stronger, I had to lift weights. If I wanted to become more agile and quick, I had to practice doing things. And like I said, mirror work, I never did explain the martial arts thing, but I had this one exercise where I'd be in the mirror and I'd try to be quicker than the entity in the mirror. Yeah, work on that. It's like, how do you do that? Obviously, you're gonna be only as fast, and you can't beat the person in the mirror, because it's as fast as you are, supposedly. But when you do these exercises and you tell yourself, I'm going to become faster than the person in the mirror, what you do is you start working with quantum energy, and it's totally trippy. And so, yeah, so mind exercises are very important. Be playful with it, Don't have the limitations that you believe are possible. Now, so I was going to wrap it up, but I'm going to start talking about now something called neurogenesis. There's plasticity, which, if you listen to all the brain programs, even now they're still stuck on plasticity. And that is that the more you practice something, the more your neurons start to fire and create highways. It's like, whenever you fire a thought, it's an electrical circuit that you're creating, and the more that you think about this thing, the more you practice. Like, for example, Michael Jordan practiced freaking shooting, became amazing, flying in the air. That's one of the exercises I did, by the way, metaphysically. I'll have to explain that some other time. Unbelievable. So the more you practice, the more these circuits are created. So it's because you're firing the same highways, the same routes, and so they become stronger. They become fortified, and the more you fire them, the more they become wired. So it's basically practice makes perfect. You become better at what you're focusing on, or you access more understanding of what you're trying to learn about, or whatever. Anyway, so there's something called neurogenesis, which I came across early on, because I was able to do things that are impossible, and then I was like, universe, can you please show me what it is I tapped into, so I could explain it to people with linear minds, just scientifically. And I didn't, it's like it wasn't that it was less valid that I had these experiences, and like I said, fortunately people would come and tell me what I was doing. So I had outside feedback. It wasn't just in my head, which is great, because after 25 years you start to question, did that really happen? Was that just in my mind? It's like, it's so unbelievable that it's natural for you to question it. But luckily I had people that came and told me what I was doing. So it's just so nice to have that, especially over a long time. So that the experiences were extra solid. Outside verification, not necessary, but nice to have. So, and that's what's beautiful about tapping into this. It's like years later, after not practicing, it's like my understanding allowed me to resonate and still create new experiences or relationship with the universe. One of them, very divine. It's called synchronicity. That's what I called it. I didn't realize that the concept had already existed, and until years later, I called it synchronicity. And my understanding was, in my experience, was that it's basically the universe telling you you're on the right path. And what I mean by synchronicity is that things would happen that are amazingly impossible to occur. So there are patterns that would manifest where, like, let's say something highly impossible. Okay, one example was while I was still dating my wife. We would go out to different places, completely different cities. A lot of times it was nightclubs or restaurants or whatever. And all of a sudden, within a short period of time, I think that in this case it was months. Usually it's days or same day. That's what's amazing. When you get the same day, it's like bam, bam, bam. It's like, I think I'm smart, but it takes me, more than a few times in order for me to go, wow. It's mind-blowing. beautiful, like, wow, the universe is like, hey, and the way I define synchronicity, because I define everything myself, is it's a sort of a collapse of the wave function, so that the universe reveals that it's certain aspects of it to you. So going to these different nightclub, restaurants, whatever, I all of a sudden came across people that would all of a sudden bring up this topic, which is super rare. You see, in order for me to accept, one of the conditions I used to have, I don't think I have that anymore, but for the longest time, years, for me to consider synchronicity was at least 3 times, and the topic would be something that you never hear about, but all of a sudden starts arising. And in this case, it was astral travel. Okay? How often do you hear about astral travel? When's the last time you heard about astral travel? So most people, never. Okay? You may be special, but I'd say 99.9% of the people out there, haven't heard of astral travel, maybe ever. And so all of a sudden people would come and, as I'm saying hi or doing my thing, they would bring up astral travel. And the first time, oh, cool, never really talk about that. And by the way, some of the information gaining is through astral travel, and I'll have to explain that later. It's sort of being able to take your consciousness to where the information is in the universe. And I think, you say this is too much information, but I'm just throwing it all out there. I think the information I was accessing may have been located around the Earth, around the ionosphere, that layer, because it's all electric. I see it as electric. My model of the universe, electromagnetic. So it's about putting yourself in a place, taking your body, your mind, your spirit, and eventually your soul. Purifying the spirit to tap into soul. Because in order to connect to source, you have to align to it, and since it's pure, you have to purify your soul. And there are exercises you can do to do that. And like I keep jumping around, but the soul thing was, the spirit thing was, no matter what you think, if you sin, being, around a lot of girls or whatever, even though that it's not a big deal, at that age, I felt like that might be a sin. And so, but I was able to align myself with this purity. And that's a beautiful thing, is that we all have access to this. You just have to know how to work it, what exercises to do, what to concentrate on, how to foster, through breath, being able to take in this pure energy. And there's a chain. I'm very specific about it. Use your breath to take in white light, where the pure energy comes in, and then you focus next time on your breath again, but you seek the pure within the pure. So you're always honing in on the powerful, pure energy. You have to go within the last pure and the last pure. And, so that's what you do with your focused mind. So essentially, the feeling that you get, have to go back to that, is, okay, so I had all these great experiences, the weightlifting contest where everyone's cheering, being with beautiful women. I forgot to mention the connection to source. The way I explain it when you get there, after the 3rd hour, is essentially first 2 hours primal, 3rd hour you start working with wave. The primal is a physical particle that you're addressing, the mundane material world. You take yourself to a state of mind where you push your body so far that you start to release, because your mind, your brain gets really tired of telling your body to push itself, that's door one. Good luck. It's going to take a lot of work. And you push yourself so physically so much that your brain gets tired, your mind releases. And now all of a sudden we're working with the wave state, or flowing, or the frequencies. That's the third hour starts. And then that's when I start to do the breath work. Now you're working with frequency. After 2 hours of physical, now tapping into the frequency powerfully, focused, being able to focus on the frequency, channel it. It's all about feeling what you want to create and having it channeled. So now the exercises go from more physical. You can do martial arts, you can do hooping, you can do dancing, great. Physical, I would just work out in a room. And now I'm going to tell you, a little bit, something might sound funny, but it was, I would strip myself of all my clothes, because I was working with energy that was so subtle. I didn't want a barrier between myself and the space, just the air around me. And so what's interesting is, seeing everything energetically, I didn't want a barrier between myself and this energy. So, and what's interesting is, while you're exercising, you're generating sweat, and that has salt in it. And I believe one of the most powerful locations you can do this kind of practice is right next to the ocean, because of the salt air. It's sort of ions, or it allows the generation of energy to go further. So that's also just, like I said, I have so much information. I could just keep going on and on and on. Back to the neurogenesis. So, I was like, how can I do that? How can I be doing this stuff? And what's interesting is, this is my philosophy. It tends to be that I'm right all the time as far as this is concerned. Other stuff, whether it's politics or economics, man, that is just a mind game that you can't really, the things that, anyways, totally different realm. I think it actually might be the lowest realm that you could deal with on this planet. Whereas this information is the highest in this universe. And I wanted to mention, if you're sending out information or energy, think bigger. In other words, don't just want to manifest for yourself. Always add to it. And this is what's interesting. Don't doubt that you can manifest what you're focused on, but add more things to it. Like, say, I want to be happy with that, whatever it is you're manifesting. I want to be healthy. I want not just, for yourself or your family or your neighborhood or your city or your state or your country or the world, the whole universe. You want to elevate the consciousness of the universe itself. And that's how powerfully you connect. It's like you want to telescope your mind so that you're uplifting the overall consciousness of the universe. Neurogenesis. My philosophy. What this is essentially you're creating new neurons, okay? And these neurons are different than the existing neurons. That's what makes up your brain. A bunch of neurons is what creates your brain. So these neurons are more excitable. In other words, they fire off more. And that's because they have what's called the lower active threshold potential. It takes less energy for them to be fire off, to trigger, than your mature neurons. So that means that essentially my philosophy is, when you create these new neurons through exercise, prolonged exercise does it. Learning new things does it. Peaking your mind, is telling it, I'm still alive, I'm still interacting with the universe. And exercise is one of the most amazing ways to do it, whether it's weightlifting or aerobic. I suggest both. Why not? But it's got to be prolonged exercise. It's interesting, I find, that doing a physical thing has such a powerful effect on the mind, on the brain itself, that you're creating new brain tissue, more excitable. So I argue, my philosophy is, you're creating these new neurons. They don't have the limited potential that your existing mature neurons have. In other words, it's like we all think that we have a great understanding of reality, so when someone says you can do this, you go, that's fucking crazy. That's not possible. Because you have not seen it in your own experience. And that's a very valid philosophical view, because I say that because I was there. I was like, if I haven't experienced it or even sensed it even a bit, then it's not a part of reality. And, that's a general good rule to go about it. So it's your BS detector in a sense. And it's good to have. But at the same time, it's very limiting. So these new neurons, I see, they're way more malleable. They don't have the limitations of your existing mind. So just like, and this is how I explain it, just like when you work out, if you work out on your biceps, your muscle mass is going to be put along the greatest lines of resistance. That's just a response to reality. It's your body adapting to the physical interaction that it has, where it's needed most. Your body is smart. It's infinitely smart. You just got to guide it in the right direction. Well, now we're talking about the brain and the mind. And so what do these neurons function to do? I think my philosophy is mind things. So when you have to give it a direction. Like, earlier I mentioned, you want to create your muscle to look a certain way, or create more lines or a certain shape, be bigger in this location. It works, and doing mirror work with that is great. Well, with the mind, it would be what you tell it to do. And, don't limit yourself to what is possible. It's all quantum energy, or it's all energy, and the way you relate with that energy draws it more into reality. And essentially, these neurons are not programmed like the other ones. So you could have an interesting goal in mind, become younger, things that are impossible. It's not going to say, this is not possible. What it does is you're telling your new brain cells that are more hyperactive, which are essentially, my philosophy, going to override your brain faster and quicker. So if you want to change something, the greatest thing to do is combine the physical exercises, create these new neurons. Third hour, focus on what you want to create. And so you're giving these new neurons a direction to work towards. And because it's energy and you're transmitting, and they don't have the limitations that your existing mind has, expect some amazing, unbelievable results. That's where I'm at, and I hope you like this video. I hope there was some interesting information in there. I have so much more I'll share. I love you very much. Like I said, like, subscribe, and share, most importantly. Love you. Take care.